Welcome, Bill, to the show. Really glad to have you here. I noticed you got a new book out called Further Faster. I want to hear about that, but also why don't you let the audience know a little bit about your background and kind of what brought you to writing this book and the way you're helping companies.
Sure. Well, first, thanks for having me on. I really appreciate it. So my quick and dirty background is I've sort of had two paths in my life. One is I did startups forever. So I did 10 startups over about a 25-year period. At one point, I was 5 for 6, so that was a pretty good hit rate. I ended up being 5 for 10. And to me, a win is either an IPO or an acquisition or some sort of liquidation event for the investors and such. So these are real sort of events that happen. So I've been through 2 IPOs and 7 acquisitions in those 25 years. Generally on the senior team, I've never been a CEO or a founder. I've generally been the operator that came in to scale the business. And so my second track, which is about 4 years old now, is similar to what you're doing. I coach. I'm a business coach. I don't coach individuals. I coach teams, and I teach them a framework on how to grow their business in a sort of flourishing and healthy way. That's basically what the book is about.
Okay. I want to compliment you right at the beginning that you didn't say I had a 5 out of 6 success rate, but then you clarified and were candid that, it worked out to be like 5 out of 10. A lot of people wouldn't have done that. So
5 out of 10 is still pretty good.
Yeah, no, it's still good. It's still good. But, a lot of people would have just stuck with the 5 out of 6 because they're promoting. So already I'm interested in you because you're showing some integrity and candor up front. So
cool.
Talk to me about what you do with these teams, because, I, like yourself, run into companies and they've just plateaued. They're kind of stuck, or the growth rate's not where it should be, or they're going in the wrong direction. So what kind of things are you going in and facing, and what's happening?
Yeah. So what I've found is over the last 4 or 5 years, and even before that, so I've been studying business for almost 30 years. I love trying to figure stuff out and really looking at sort of how did that happen, right? Why are these companies really successful? Why are these leaders seen as the greatest leaders, et cetera? And are there some patterns you can find? And what I found is that there are some patterns that the really great leaders have, and that's the few, and then there's everybody else. And what I've found is that most leaders don't understand how to do it because we've never been taught how to do it, right? We go to school, we learn marketing as a thing, or finance as a thing, or engineering as a thing, but we don't learn how do I run a really big organization. It's just multidisciplinary. You have to be sort of a deep generalist if you want. And we're never taught how to do that. So what we do is we go with what we know. And what do I say? Whatever the CEO is the best at is where the company is the weakest. Right? Steve Jobs was really good at marketing, and no one else was really good at marketing in Apple. So, he had to figure out a way to do that. And so that's what we do. We gravitate towards what we're comfortable with, what we like. And then we forget that it's not about that anymore. What I tell my leaders is your job, once you get to a certain size, is to fire yourself from your job, because it's not your job anymore. Your job isn't running the day-to-day of the company anymore. Your job is to figure out, where are we going? What's coming? How do I have time to think about what's going on in the space? I have more time to talk to customers, or my best customers and my suppliers, so I can start to collect all this information, because you're looking for insight. And insight is usually, it's 2 loose connections that come together all of a sudden. In order to do that, you need to gather a lot of information. And when you're doing, you can't do that. I do this thing. I speak at Vistage around the country. Are you familiar with Vistage?
Oh, yeah.
So for those who aren't, it's sort of a peer-to-peer advisory group's been around 60 or 70 years. And so I do that 10, 20 times a year. And what I've found is that the leaders that are there, I ask them sort of, what makes a good leader? And their answers are varied, but it's never about thinking of the future. It's sort of, hey, it's making sure that things get done. It's very operational and execution. And I say, okay, but if you're growing, that means you're moving into a space that's not known. So that's about innovation and creativity, et cetera. And I say, well, where do you get your best ideas? And then, so I'll ask you, Dave, where do you get your when do your best ideas come to you often?
Well, I think a catalyst for a lot of the best ideas are from clients.
Yeah, but
So whether
when
it's,
do you,
when do
like,
I have them?
yeah, like
In the shower or when I'm driving,
exactly,
you know?
yeah. on a ride or on a run, right? You're not
Yeah.
actually doing.
Yeah.
And that's what I say. So you need to create that space, because that's what you're looking for. You're looking for those wonderful ideas. So you need to create that space. And that's sort of what I've learned from folks is they think they confuse activity with productivity.
Oh, yeah. Very, very common now. I think you've said something that's very interesting. So what I find similar to you is somebody who's really good at something gets promoted to a new position of leadership. Whether we're talking about a line employee gets promoted first to manager, or then you go to director or whatever. But it's this whole concept of, but they were never trained how to be a leader in that role. Now, you're taking it a step further, which I think is really helpful for our audience to kind of step back and think about this. And I don't know whether you can extrapolate out, expand a bit more. This concept that when you're put into a top leadership role, a C-level role, you're not tactical anymore. You're more strategy and this insight you're striving to get. It's kind of like when you're attacked, do you respond in fight or flight mode, or do you step back and say, why is this person behaving that way? So I'm kind of curious, how do you train people to develop that habit and the systems behind it?
Yeah, so I'm a neuroscience geek. I've been studying neuroscience for almost 15 years, and I weave it into my practice, because one of the most important things to do is you're a leader of people. And I like to joke is we're crazy, right? People are just crazy. You know, we're highly irrational. We're highly emotional. We're not what economists think we are, right? That's why generally economists aren't right, because until recently, because there's something called behavioral economics now, right? Which is Danny Kahneman and Tversky and Richard Thaler and all these people, because they're like, people aren't doing what would make sense. I think it's called utilitarian theory or something like that. We don't do that. We have mental math, mathematics, and where we have buckets of money. It's like, oh, that's for that money, and this is for, can't touch that money, but it's all the same bucket, right? It's just sort of how you do it. So I teach a lot of that. I teach a lot about, hey, you got to understand that you're a leader of people, and in order for people to be a leader of people, you need them to follow you. So you need to create an environment where they want to follow you, and you need to be empathetic and compassionate and understanding, but you also need to give them a direction, right? They're following you because you're going somewhere. You need to make that very clear, very vivid for them. So I teach a lot of that, and I just weave it in as we go. I do some exercise. I'm a big Pat Lencioni fan. I sort of weave some of his stuff in there, and some of my own stuff I sort of pile on top. And what I want them to see is to say, yeah, I don't really know these people as much as I thought I did. No wonder they're not performing the way I thought they should, because they're not thinking like me, right? We have this sort of, people think like we do, and we don't. We all think differently. We all have different backgrounds and upbringings and experiences. So you really got to weave that in to make them understand. So I teach a couple of things. One thing called SCARF, which is called Status, Certainty, Autonomy, Relatedness, and Fairness, which basically says our brain has two modes: move towards reward and away from threat. And status, certainty, autonomy, relatedness, and fairness are the 5 things that often are interplaying in that, right? So a story is, and I'm sure this has happened to you when you were younger, is you ever were in a meeting and the meeting went pretty well, and your boss kind of tapped you on the shoulder and said, hey, Dave, come back to my office, and I just want to talk about the meeting. And you're like, oh my God, right? The first thing is, what did I do wrong? And then you're walking back behind this person and you're thinking, okay, what could it be? Am I gonna get in trouble? Might I get fired? If I get fired, then we can't buy that house you wanted, or the kids can't go to college. So by the time you sit down across the desk from this person, you're in like full threat mode. And it doesn't matter what they say to you, you're not listening. You're not comprehending what they're saying. And I say, look, here's another way to do the same exact thing. Hey, David, that was great. It was an good meeting. And what I'd like to do is I'd like to grab lunch with you sometime this week. And I want to get your ideas on what you thought really went well in the meeting and where you think we might improve. And I'll bring mine as well. And then let's work together to make the next meeting even better than this meeting. Same general outcome, completely different approach. And now I'm no longer in threat mode and I'm open to it. I'm like, wow, my boss really wants me, he values me and whatever. So that's a story of a concept of what I teach.
Yeah, and it's very consistent, I think, with what I've seen over there where, great leaders in some ways over communicate. Yes. So instead of that brief little, and then I'm going to go jump to my next task. Am I correct? It kind of goes back to what you were saying, where the great leaders are looking ahead to what's happening next. So your original person was looking forward to just this next move on the chessboard of, I need to meet with him to talk about this. Whereas the example you're providing is that leader is looking several moves on the chessboard ahead to say, I got to think of how this person is going to respond to what I say. I got to think of how they're going to prepare mentally for when we meet. And so they're adapting their communication as a result. Am I getting it?
Yeah, that's called second order thinking. Right?
Okay.
Is what are the ripples? What are the impacts? And it could be third order thinking. So I could take it even further back, which says, okay, how do I make sure that everyone on my team knows how to run a really good meeting?
What a concept.
Right? Or what makes a really good team leader? And have I helped all these people to be the best possible team leaders they can be? Now you're 3 levels back, right? And now you're just sort of tweaking, hey, that was really good. I heard one thing happen. Did you notice it? Yes, I did. Okay, great. Try not to do that next time. So those are things that you can do as a leader. You should always be thinking about I love to say this phrase, which is we are enamored of solving the problem that's right in front of us. And we need to be more interested in solving the problem that's creating the problem that's right in front of us.
Yeah.
And if you keep doing that, it'll get better and better.
Yeah, particularly as a leader. Now, can you go back to this point you're making about that people are, did you put it irrational?
Yeah, we're highly emotional, highly irrational.
Yeah. So, I mean, particularly you look at the situation we're at now with, coming off this COVID crisis and the way it's been handled here in the United States and, with the total shutdown versus doing more of a vertical approach or whatever. And there's been a concern by some people like myself about the economy. California just announced they're going to have a $53 billion deficit due to shutting everything down.
Of course.
And already you're seeing people on both sides, and I'm not looking to have this be a talk of us taking one side or the other, yeah. But you're seeing people on both sides. You're seeing people that there was a report that in one state, I forget what it was, they got 500 calls of people wanting the police to go arrest people because they weren't social distancing. And then you've got people on the other extreme that are saying, this is nothing and blah, blah, blah. And how do you as a leader navigate this water when you're dealing with people who are irrational and whatever? How do you get them to come together as a team and put aside their fears and find some common ground?
Well, so I'm part of an organization of about 200 coaches around the world. And when this crisis happened, we got together and said, how can we help anyone as possible? We do this for a living, right? We're supposed to help teams. And so we put together, in essence, a framework and a checklist. And the framework, and they were basically working together, which says, okay, what do you do first? We say, you got to look down first, and then you look out. But you got to make sure that down is done, right? So what's the first thing you want to do? And I think a lot of leaders got this right, is health and safety of your employees, your customers, and your suppliers, right? The people the stakeholders that are around you. Make sure that are you doing everything you can to make sure that they're safe. Next, number 2 is, this is about money. This is about cash. So do everything you can. And one of the things I recommend to my leaders that I've worked with is said, you need to assign someone who's really good at this, or a set of people who are really good at this. They need to go and find every possible way that they can get money into the business and save money in the business. And they have to come with you with, here are all the ideas. And then you have to figure out which ones you're going to do, which ones you're not going to do. Like for me, my business dropped 90-something%. Yeah. My clients just said, either we're so busy because this is a positive for us and I don't have time, or we got slammed and I just laid off 70% of my workforce. And I said, great, no problem. It is what it is. So that's what I did. I said, okay, how am I going to do this? I can do everything virtually. I found, I applied for my PPP. I cut my expenses by 70%. I did all these things. Then once you've gotten the point where, okay, they're safe and you've done everything you can keep improving on that. The business is as stable as it can be. This is an unknown. We don't know how long it's going to last. This is about the worst threat situation our brain can be in, because our brain does not like ambiguity. It likes certainty. And what we do is your brain will make up scenarios. So to your two constituencies, one scenario is we just, there's going to be civil unrest and domestic violence and blah, blah, blah. We need to solve that. How do we do that? We just get everyone back to work. Then there's like the other side, which says, oh, well, it's safety and we don't want to have people die unnecessarily. So we got to do this. And then these are two values that are clashing right now.
Oh yeah. Yeah.
And there's not a lot, usually when there's a clash, it's almost always a values clash. Like if you really get to it, it's someone values something in a different way than you do, and you don't understand that. So you're just hitting each other. So as a leader, you've got to understand all that and then create an environment where once you've done that is you need to give your people some control. And the way you can give them control is give them meaningful work, right?
Yeah.
And that's what we like. That gives us some certainty. It's like, I can do that. And then we don't go spinning off and catastrophizing because we're focused on a task at hand, and not busy work, but this is getting us closer to where we're going, or we're helping people, or whatever it is. So I think those are the three things that work best, right? Health and safety first of all your constituencies, make sure that your business is stable, and then give meaningful work. If you do that, you're 80% of the way there, in my opinion.
Yeah. I have a client in New York, WCA Technologies, they're a MSP that's providing outsourced IT stuff. And he made a point from the beginning that he was touching base with all his employees, just doing personal calls, checking in, and the same thing with clients. And that's where he spent his time. And he continues to do that now. And they have done what you recommended. They give their people work to do that has a start and an end, because then they can feel it's meaningful. And now what they're doing is they're moving them into specific learning tasks, getting a certification or completing a course. So as they went past the initial rush of 2 or 3 weeks where got to get all the clients working remote, that was just a rush of work to do and service tickets. Then they've come out of that, and now the techs are having a little bit of free time. So they're saying, well, on work time, you can spend this many hours doing study and pursuing this stuff. And it's very consistent with, what you're recommending there. Yeah. I'm curious, going back to your book, Further Faster. So here we have a situation where a lot of businesses have gone to ground zero. I mean, your revenue is off 90% of business. Mine's the same, basically. And you have some that just totally shut down. And so when you think further faster, one of the things that strikes me is you're teaching something that I don't hear often enough, of trying to help these leaders step back and not do the task work, but more think ahead. What are some of the things you're seeing with your clients that you might share that your people are thinking further faster? Okay, I'm at ground zero. How do I ramp up? How do I get this business going again in a healthy way?
Yep. Yeah, I have one client that so I've been working. They're my oldest client. I've only been doing this 4 years, and they're almost 4 years old. So they've stuck with me for 4 years, and they're terrific. They're enlightened leaders. They're humble. They're curious. They really care about their people. They're like the best kind of clients. You want the some clients you take. I don't try to take clients. I try to pick clients. Yeah. And they're one I always want to work with, but they get hit really hard. They're in the study abroad industry, and no one's traveling. So they have no revenue. They're planning no revenue until December. And I've worked with them a long time. And as you know, as a coach, you can't make someone do anything. You just give them the information, and hopefully you give them some motivation or something, your click that they actually do it, but you can't make them do it. And this group has 3 leaders at the top, and then there was 8 different companies underneath. They're, tens of millions of dollars in size. Not huge, but not small. And they came to me about a month after this happened, because they just went they went underground. I never heard from them because they were like, what the hell are we going to do?
Yeah.
And one of the leaders came to me and said, you know what? I'm really bummed out that this is happening. You know, next week we're going to lay off 60% of our workforce. And then they actually have laid off another 20% since then. He said, but I'm really excited because all this stuff you've been telling us, we can do now. We can focus on the best customers. We can find the best, the A players, and really focus our time and energy. You know, it's like an excuse to actually do what I've been saying, which is, you know, one of my mantras is few things truly matter, but those that do matter tremendously. And your job as a leader is to figure out those few things. And our job as a coach is to help you find those and then have you rigorously keep focusing on them. Just keep doing it, because that should get you further faster, right? When you look at, I'm sure with your business, maybe not with yours, because I'm not sure, mine's a little different, but a lot of businesses, if you look at where their profit comes from, where most of their cash, it's 20% or 10% of their customers. You want more of those. Getting one more of those is better than getting 10 of the folks that are at the bottom of that list. And that's why I say, just keep focusing on that. So that's what I'm hearing, you know, and I'm not hearing from all of them. Some are just, you know, they're just in full threat mode. I have an apparel company that just started making masks because no one's buying their stuff. So they pivoted, at least for the short term. You know, it's a survival tactic. But that's generally, I think that's a good exemplar of what my leaders that I'm working with are sort of thinking.
Yeah. And I'm seeing a similar thing, and we're doing it internally here, is we're trying to focus on, okay, what do we see? We're trying to look ahead. What do we see happening? How are we going to change? How are we going to adapt? How do we help people moving forward? And we've been working on different tools that we can provide as people come out. I'm curious, one other aspect that you say that's rather unique, in that you said you do not coach individuals, you coach teams. I'd like to hear more about that dynamic, how you only work with the teams and what you're trying to accomplish with a team that's different than working with individuals.
Yeah. So, and I hope I don't say anything that offends those who do this, but I find that, so part of what I do, just by default, I work with the leader, right? The head of company, and it becomes a bit of a one-on-one because I'm there for them. They can call me. We set up calls on a monthly basis anyway, outside of the team meetings. So there is some of that. But I don't want to do that as a living. I sort of see it as business therapy, which is really good. Vistage is a really good organization. EO, IPO, those are there to help you feel connected and that you're not in this alone, and that's really important. But it's not what gets me up in the morning. Get me up in the morning is helping people figure out a puzzle and then improving and getting better every day. And teams do most of the work. If you look at research that's been done, more than 80% of people in the world are on at least one team. And a percentage of those are on more than one team. And many of those other teams aren't even represented in the org chart. So one of the things I do teach is you need to teach everyone how to be a really good team leader, because a lot of teams just pop up, right? There's a problem. There's a multidisciplinary team. Someone has to lead it. Great. Do they know how to run a team? How do they do that? How do they make sure that everyone gets heard and we're surfacing the best information to make the best decisions? Like you said earlier, we don't really teach that.
Yeah.
We just assume they know how to do it, right? We assume that everyone can be a parent. You know what? We struggled for years with my kid, right? I mean,
that's a whole nother podcast.
I know, right? But it's similar, right? It's very similar. Parenting and being a leader of a team are not that dissimilar.
Yeah. Oh, I agree. I sometimes refer to leadership as adult daycare.
Exactly. So that's what I think you need to sort of understand those things. So you can make it so you're back to your original point, which is make it so you're not having to do that. Right. There's a great book by Stanley and Crystal called Team of Teams, right? Your job is to create teams of teams. As your business grows bigger and bigger, you should have less and less to do with the day-to-day. And the reason I know this is because I live this, and I didn't quite do what I teach now. I did about a third of what I teach now, but it worked really well. And I knew it really, really well because for about 4 months or 5 months before I left to go do another startup, my day was over at 11 o'clock every morning. I had no other meetings. I had no reports to do. So, I walked around, I called customers and did other things because my job was to, where are we going? And one of the reasons that really worked was I found out that the business that I was in was going to be crushed by Microsoft and Google. And I said, okay, I know this. What am I going to do about it? And I got recruited to do another startup, and I made that choice. It was actually a step back, but it was a cool industry. So I'm like, So I actually moved to something else, and a lot of the business, it's actually Mindshift. If you know Mindshift with WCA, they're big. Yeah. So I worked for them. I was a CMO for them for a little while, and I ran one of the divisions.
Okay.
So yeah, so I moved. We were the online division, email marketing and stuff. Email hosting.
So talk to me a little bit more about this, though. This concept of what did you get done by 11 a.m. and then how did you spend the rest of the day? And I'm based on who you are. I'm assuming still very productive time, but kind of talk to me about those two parts of your day, because I'm thinking how powerful that is when you're encouraging leaders to step back and really develop these next steps and help people really embrace the vision, but you also have to define that vision. So
yeah,
what did that look like?
That's exactly what I did. First thing is one of the things I do with all my leaders is I give them a book by Cameron Herold called Vivid Vision. And I buy it for them and I give it to them. And I say, this is the only thing I'm requiring you to do. In all of our years and months together, you have to do this. You have 3 months to write your vivid vision. And then you have to give it to your team, and then they'll make it better and make it clearer, et cetera. Because there are studies out there that say, what do people want from their leaders? And there are two things that almost always pop to the top, which is they want two main things from you, which is they want to know that whatever you tell them is true. They know that you can't always tell them everything, but whatever comes out of your mouth better be true, because trust arrives on foot and leaves in a Ferrari. So if you lose it, it's going to be really hard to get back.
And we're not going to talk about politics.
Okay. The second thing is they want to know, where are we going? They just want to know, where are we going? They're followers. They want to know where they're following you to. And the Vivid Vision gives them that. And then once they write it, I say, you use it in everything. You use it in your hiring, you're growing, you're exiting of people, everything, because that's what you're doing. And then your team should say, do I want to do that with you or not? And if they don't, then you say, that's okay. You should probably go somewhere else that more aligns with what you want to do. No hard feelings. So you have to start with Vivid Vision. And then, so that's what I did with my team, is I said, okay, here's the deal. I want us to be sort of here, right? This is what I envision. And I'm happy to debate and argue with you, but we sort of aligned on that. And I said, great, each of you has a role to get us there. We're not there yet. I need you to draw me the map from where you are to where your part ends in that vision. And we'll work together as a team to get us there. And then about 6-7 months into that, we started to see progress. And, the meetings were much better. Their team, my team and their teams were more autonomous and doing things on their own. They were coming up with great ideas. We doubled the business in about 18 months. And it had been 7 or 8, 9 months old. It hadn't doubled in quite a while. And we didn't have to hire a lot of people because we were much more efficient and everyone was working. I did a whole bunch of other stuff as well. But I basically gave, Ron Lovett says this great thing in one of his books. He said, I gave people their brains back, right? These are smart people and they care and they want to do a good job. Okay, let them. Yeah, they're going to screw up, but that's why you have values and purpose and all those things to give them those little guidelines. I say that's the, like the bowling alley for the kids with the rails that come up. Yeah. These are the rails, right? Do anything you want in here, but you can't go over there. If you do, we're going to probably have a conversation. If you do it twice, you're not coming back. Right? And then once we set that up, I didn't have to do as much anymore. I even ran marketing while I was a GM, and my team was so autonomous by then. They didn't need me. They didn't need once in a while to sign off on something, or they like, hey, can you have an idea here? But that was it. So I had my one-on-ones, and then I had my weekly meeting with my team, and then I had 1 or 2 reports that I gave to the CEO of Mindshift, and I was done. And I walked around. I went to more conferences and things to learn more about the industry. I was sort of the product marketing guy, like, where's it going? We didn't really have one, so I sort of took on that role. I managed by walking around. I just walked to people's cube and say, you got a minute, how do you think things are going? What can I do better? What's if you were running the place, what's like one thing you do to make it better? Do that start, stop, keep thing, all that kind of stuff. And I just gathered information and we just kept going.
Do you remember any of those times where somebody said something that was really like, a 2x4 across the forehead of, oh, wow, that's really something to consider. That's something we should do.
Yeah, so we were a customer in this particular company. We were, in essence, it was email hosting, but it was really a customer service company, right? That's really what we were. And our customers didn't like us.
Oh, not a good thing.
Which is a problem, right? So before it was right around when NPS was becoming a thing. This was 2007, 2008. It was out. Reichheld had written the book, but it wasn't really used a lot. So I did my own, and so I said, okay, then let's, I'll trust that you're right. We didn't have a very high attrition rate, so I'm thinking this is great, right? But as I read later, is well, people don't like to make change, so they'll live with a lot of crap. But as soon as they've had enough, they're gone. So the goal was to never get to that point. And so I did that. And so I did a 1 out of 5, and we got a 2.9 in our first score out of 5, 58% approval rate. Not so good. So I said, okay, how do we fix this? And I did this thing called, the organization, the umbrella organization that Mindshift purchased was called Group Spark. So I had learned this in another company. So what we did is we created this thing where you could spark people. What I wanted people to do was to focus on that one thing, customer service. How do we make sure that we get great customer service? And it can't be me standing up there, you must give great customer service, right? And be nice, and that's wonderful. But so I said, look, I want you guys to catch each other doing stuff right. And there's 2 scenarios. One is if you overhear someone that's just taking really great care of somebody and doing a great job of satisfying a customer, or someone who's taking care of someone, supporting someone who's doing that. You can spark them. You can spark anyone you want, anytime. Don't worry about it. They'll get $50 on the spot. They'll get an email, and at the end of every month, we're going to say their name and give them a blue ribbon. And we just started doing that. And we had to grease the wheels a little bit at the beginning, right? Some of the senior leaders had to say, hey, that's a really good idea. Why don't you spark them? Like, oh yeah, because they'd forgotten, or they were a little shy about doing it. But by the end, we had 10, 12, 15 every month. And the blue ribbons I thought were a little hokey, but I said, what the hell, let's give it a try. And we were mostly cubes. And what I found was when I would turn the corner to see someone's cube, guess what was right in front of me? Their blue ribbons.
Yeah.
They were super proud. And when I ended, about 7 months later, I left, we were 4.6 out of 5, 92%.
Yeah.
And I didn't do it, but I created an atmosphere so they could do it.
Yeah. Yeah. So, and you basically, the way I word it is you created I get asked, how do I motivate people? I say, well, the studies I've read say you can't motivate people, because when you motivate, it's momentary. So what you have to do as a leader is create a self-motivating work environment.
Yes.
And that's what you did. And yeah. You created something that was, if I'm understanding you correctly, their idea. So they owned it, and you just had to kind of nudge it along, kind of put those guardrails up like the bowling alley for the kids, type of thing, and then follow through. So that's awesome. So moving forward, people need ideas on how to accelerate their prosperity coming out of this mess. Do you have some final tips for people? And then, we'll have it in the notes, but where can people learn more about what you teach? And of course, pick up a copy of your book, Further Faster.
Yeah. So, and that's really, the book came out a little over a month ago, and I was debating, should I put it out in all of this? And I spoke to, the team that I was working with, and we said, what? This is a book that was designed for just this situation. Now, they should have read it 2 or 3 years ago and started doing stuff. Yeah. But, it's also a preparatory book for, okay, now that once we've settled down and as you said that we have a little more time, how do we not do this again? How do we, and that's never 100%, right? But how can we put ourselves in the best possible position that if this ever happens, we're not doing this again, we're doing something else. And hopefully it's a little less stressful and whatever. And that's my book. My book is 3 things. One is, as I mentioned already, performance is a team sport. And I have a lot of tips in there, how to not only draft, but create and build and create great teams and team leaders. And there's an entire section on that. And none of these ideas, as you know, none of these ideas are mine, right? I'm a curator of knowledge, right? And sort of pull those things out. So this Marcus Buckingham, Amy Edson, all these people, and I have my own little twist on it. But So that's really important. You also have to understand that strategy and execution are connected. They are one thing. They're not two things. They're on the same coin. And I'll give you an example is when I do my Vistage talks, and I do this all the time, is a lot of the leaders that I talk to, I say, so give me what's your greatest barrier to success right now, to growth. And it's almost always operational, right? My people, the people aren't doing the right thing. They're not coming in on time. They're not doing the right, not getting it done on time, whatever. That's very execution oriented. And I say, okay, so what are they executing on? And they kind of look at me like, what do you mean? Well, the plan. I'm like, well, okay, how did you create the plan? And they look at me again, like, what do you mean? I say, well, and I finally get them to, basically, your plan is generated from your strategy. And then you execute on your strategy. And then you learn what works well and what doesn't work well. And then you fix stuff. And this is sort of this loop, right? This is what Simon Sinek calls the infinite game. That's what he means. The infinite game is strategy and execution. What's our strategy? Let's start executing. Oh, that's wrong. That's not, okay, fix that. Great. You don't have to have an awesome strategy. You have to have a decent one focused on your best customers. So you have to really understand that. Because then I asked them, I say, okay, so let's assume that it's strategy and execution are connected. What would happen if I walked into your office on Monday morning at 10 o'clock when you have your team meeting with all your senior leaders, and I say, hey, you know what? I want everyone to do one thing. Write down in your own words, what is our current company strategy? And I would have to read them out loud to everyone. What do you think would happen? And they laugh, right? They're like, oh my God, it's going to be all over the place, right? I said, so often this is what happens is they're executing really well on their version of the strategy. Your job as a leader is to get them all on the same page or really close to the same page. Then you can fix some of these execution problems. If not, you're just doing whack-a-mole, right? And lastly is cash. I'm a 30-year sales and marketing guy. Revenue is vanity, profit is sanity, cash is king. If you're going to want to grow your business, you should base your financial metric should be cash. How much money do I need to do that? And then build your business on how to make that money so you can do it. You can borrow and all that kind of stuff, but it's much better to generate yourself. Those are the three things that I recommend. If you did those three things and you've been working those, then this type of situation, yes, it will happen. You might lose all your revenue, but you might have a cash reserve that lasts 6, 7, 8, 9 months, and everyone gets paid. You don't have to furlough anybody. You can decide what you want to do. You can get your PPP or whatever as well, which probably will never happen again. Never happened in my lifetime, and probably never happen in anyone who's living now. So if you do those three things, you'd be much better prepared for something like this, because we've been through 3 of these in 20 years, 9/11, 2008, COVID. It's going to happen again. Be prepared. So,
hey, great way to end the podcast. So, Bill Flynn, I'm really glad to have you on the podcast. I hope people pick up your book Further Faster. I'm going to look at get my own copy so I can read it, and look forward to our next conversation. Thanks for being here.
Yeah, thanks for having me. Really appreciate it. Take care, Dave.
Okay.